Marianne Miller, you stand indicted on 4 counts. On the first count, you're charged with uttering a forged document contrary to Section 6 of the Forgery Act 1913. And the particulars are that you, on the 20th of October 1976, uttered a forged birth certificate, knowing it to be forged and with intent to deceive. To this count, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
On the second count, you are charged with obtaining property by deception, contrary to Section 15, subsection 1 of the Theft Act 1968. And the particulars are that on the 24th of November 1974, you dishonestly obtained from one Harry Miller a conveyance of the freehold interest in all that parcel of land known as White Lodge Farm, together with the dwelling house thereon, with the intention of permanently depriving Harry Miller of the said property by a deception, namely by falsely representing that you were a woman and were competent to enter into a lawful marriage with him. To this count, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
And on the third count, you are charged with making a false declaration, contrary to Section 31 of the Perjury Act 1911. And the particulars are that on the 26th of November 1976, you knowingly and willfully caused to be made, for the purpose of being inserted in a register of marriage, a false statement as to a particular required by law to be known and registered, in that you falsely stated that you were of the female sex. To this count, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
On the fourth count, you're also charged with obtaining property by deception, and the particulars are that on the 26th of November...
The case you're about to see is a fictional one, but the procedure is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is made up of members of the general public. Marianne Miller has pleaded guilty to a charge of forgery and not guilty to 3 charges of obtaining property by deception and making false declarations.
Mrs. Moriarty, what is your full name?
Ella Moriarty.
And where do you live? 14
Dean Road, Fulchester.
In October of last year, were you employed as a clerk at the Bridge Street Registry Office, Fulchester?
Yes, that's right. Oh,
And
I still am. There wasn't any trouble over it. They could see it wasn't my fault.
On the 22nd of October of last year, did 2 persons make an application to be married, and did you complete for them a notice of intent to marry?
Yes. Well, I couldn't tell. I mean, how could anyone tell?
May she be shown Exhibit 1? Is that the notice? And is it in your handwriting, but signed by Harry Miller and Marianne Lewis?
Yes, that's right.
Did you complete the notice before they signed it?
Yes, that's it. Well, of course, I filled it in F. Well, I mean, you check the addresses and that they're living in the right district, and they swear they're telling the truth. So how would it occur to me to ask?
You're referring to the fact that in the notice, Miss Lewis is expressed to be female.
Well, yes.
Did Mr. Miller and Miss Lewis produce birth certificates?
Yes. Oh, of course, that couldn't have been her real birth certificate. But I mean, why would I have suspected that? It said female. Well, I mean, some days we have 50 or 60 people. I'm not careless, but there isn't any way I could have known. I mean, they swear they're telling the truth, so there was no reason.
May she be shown Exhibit 2? Marianne Lewis's forged birth certificate.
My lord, as there's a plea of guilty to uttering the forged certificate, I cannot see the purpose of making this an exhibit.
Both the birth certificate and the notice of intent to marry are proof that the accused did intentionally make false declaration, claiming herself to be female when she was in fact male.
I may have to concede that the defendant was by law a male, the precedent having been established in Corbett v. Corbett 1970, though I don't yet. But I deny that she was in fact a male for the purposes of these charges. Marianne Miller believes herself to be a woman and cannot be found guilty of intending to make false declaration or of intending to deceive.
My lord, Mrs. Freeman seems to be making her address to the jury before we finish with the first witness.
The birth certificate is plainly relevant to all the charges. Please circulate copies.
Are you the husband of the accused?
No, I'm not. Not as far as I'm concerned.
Did you, on the 24th of November 1976, go through a ceremony of marriage with the accused at the Bridge Street Registry Office?
Yes, but
Sorry, I can't hear what he's saying.
Could you speak up a bit, please, Mr. Miller?
Yes, we did the ceremony.
At that time, did you believe that you were her husband and she was your wife?
Yes.
When did you discover the deception?
My lord, no deception has been proved.
No, will you rephrase that question, please, Mr. Parnell?
When did you come to realize the truth about the accused?
We hadn't known each other all that long, but I was sure... Well, what I mean, something was wrong, you see. I know it sounds crazy that I couldn't tell, but neither could she. The lady from the registry office. Lots of people couldn't tell.
Mr. Miller, counsel has asked you when you discovered the truth about the person you'd married. Could you answer that question, please?
Right. Sorry. Sorry. I found out about 3 weeks after we were married.
How did you find out?
Well, like I said, things weren't right between us. I didn't think she was behaving to me the way a wife ought to do. I tried to talk to her, but she didn't want to know. I was getting more and more depressed about it.
Did you seek any advice? Did you tell anyone how worried you felt?
I told this fella Mike. He's like, you know, my best mate. I told him, and he told me this amazing thing he'd heard about Marianne. This unbelievable thing.
This is hearsay.
My lord, once again, Mrs. Freeman is running ahead. I have not introduced one scrap of hearsay evidence, and I don't intend to do so. As a material witness, Mr. Miller will relate only the relevant conversations he had with the accused.
I am relieved to hear that, Mr. Parnell. Please continue.
Mr. Miller, after you spoke to your friend, what happened? What did you do?
Well, a thing like that, I couldn't just let it go and pretend I hadn't heard. I went straight home and I sat her down, the accused. I sat her down and confronted her with what Mike had said.
Can you tell us, please, as accurately and as fully as possible, what you said to your wife?
I said, I've heard this unbelievable thing about you, this rumour. Mike says your boss at the pub told him your last job was at a drag pub, that you were a drag queen. And then you had the operation.
What operation, Mr. Miller?
The change, when they change you from a man into a woman. I said to her, it's a joke, isn't it? It's people being vicious and silly. And she says it's true. She used to be a man, but she's a woman now, and she hopes it won't make any difference.
So, she said it was true that she had had the sex change operation. What was your reaction to that?
Well, any bloke here can imagine. I just couldn't understand how it could happen to me. I've never even known anyone like that. I've heard about cases, everyone has, but I didn't think it could be possible. And I should actually go and marry one. I didn't see how it could be true.
But you realized that it was true.
There was no reason for her to say so if it wasn't.
Then the accused said she hoped it wouldn't make any difference. What was your reaction to that?
I told her she was crazy. Men can't marry other men, but she wanted to go right on being married. It made me feel sick. I told her I just wanted out right away.
And did she understand the way you felt?
No. That's a strange thing. She kept insisting she was the same as any other woman. I said, you're not. How can you say that? She went berserk, screaming at me. I won't let you do this to me. I have a right to be married, same as anybody else. You married me, you have to stay. Then she went raving on about her rights to be treated as a woman. Didn't she look like a woman, she said. Didn't she do the cooking and washing up? And I just couldn't make her understand that wasn't the point because she was getting more and more upset.
And did she eventually calm down?
Yes. Very suddenly. It was scary because I'd never seen her like that. She'd always been quite a reasonable person.
So she calmed down?
Yeah, it was like she snapped or something. She was suddenly very cool and, you know, formal. And she said, OK, she was sorry I felt that way, but she supposed she could find somebody else and she'd give me a divorce. And I said, that's very nice of you, but I don't need a divorce because we've never been married. And I said, you didn't have to give me back the money and presents I'd given her, but she had to give back the farm.
You'd given her money and gifts. What sort of gifts?
Jewellery, a little pair of gold earrings and a bracelet with sapphires.
And when did you give her these?
Before we were married.
When you believed her to be a woman?
My lord, I emphasize my client's sex has not been established.
Before you knew she'd been born a man?
That's right.
And what about the farm?
Yeah, 4 acres near Oxford. It's all my savings. It's everything I'll ever own, that farm. I put the deed in her name as a wedding present.
When did you do this?
The day before we were married.
When you believed her to be a normal woman?
My lord, I object to my friend's insulting reference to my client as abnormal.
But, Mrs. Freeman, you're not disputing the fact that your client was born a male. Taking the meaning of normal to be the norm or average amongst women, I don't see how Mrs. Miller can be described as normal.
As your lordship pleases.
All right, Mr. Parnell.
When you put the farm in the accused's name, you believed her to be an average woman?
Yes.
And when you told her that you wanted the farm back, what was her reaction?
She said I couldn't have it. She said, legal marriage or no, the deed was in her name and there was nothing I could do about it. So that's when I consulted a solicitor. And he told me she'd no right to keep the farm or anything else I'd given her, because when I gave it, I thought she was a woman.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller, why do you suppose your wife insisted on keeping that farm?
It's property. She could sell it.
Did she say that was the reason? That she wanted it for the money?
Yes. Well, she went on about her rights and...
Didn't she, in fact, say that she wanted the case to go to court to prove that she was a woman who had a right to be married? Isn't that what she meant by her right?
That was part of it, maybe, but it's the money that mattered.
It's the money that mattered to you, Mr. Miller.
My lord, why should my learned friend imply that Mr. Miller is basely motivated in wishing to retain what rightfully belongs to him?
Yes, I agree, Mr. Parnell. Mrs. Freeman, wishing to retain one's property doesn't necessarily put one in bad character.
My lord. Mr. Miller, you say you had no idea that your wife had had the operation until 3 weeks after you were married.
That's right.
But that you felt it wasn't right between you, that she wasn't behaving toward you the way a wife ought to do.
That's right.
Mr. Miller, how long had you known your wife before the two of you were married?
I suppose about 4 months.
And during that time, was it right between you?
During that time, I felt happy with her.
And in that time before you were married, did she behave toward you like a fiancé ought to do?
I don't know. I mean, well, yes, as far as it went. We never,
You never had sexual intercourse?
My lord, that question is in my submission wholly irrelevant.
Mr. Miller says he has no knowledge of Mrs. Miller's background. Of course, the question is relevant.
Yes, I think it is relevant. Answer the question, will you, Mr. Miller?
I know it seems hard to believe, but we never... No, we never did. I'm very old-fashioned that way. It's the way I was brought up.
Yes?
I've had plenty of experience. Don't worry about that.
No.
But she didn't want to. And I've always believed that if you met the right person, it was all right to wait. I was just happy being with her, you know, because she was so nice, I thought. And smarter than any of the other girls I'd known. I was just fascinated by her, you know. It doesn't seem possible, but I felt romantic-like, you know?
Yes, I see. And you say that until you heard the story from a friend, you had no idea Mrs. Miller had been born a male.
I didn't have, none at all. And don't try and make me look stupid. I'm not the only one. Look at her. Wouldn't you think she was a woman? Anybody would.
Mr. Zachi, what was your relationship with the accused?
We have been engaged to be married.
Were you lovers?
No, never.
How long did you know the accused?
4, 5 months, maybe.
And did you give certain things to the accused?
Oh, yes, many gifts. A fur coat, a gold watch.
Why did you give these gifts to the accused?
They are engagement gifts. She say, when we are married, we will have wonderful love. You take care of me now, Victor, and I take care of you later. We would walk past a jewelry store, and she would say, when I was a little girl, I always prayed for something like that, and I would buy it for her, thinking we would soon be married, not knowing that she never was a little girl. Then she come to me and say she is going to marry somebody else, per foot over.
May he be shown exhibits 3, 4, and 5? 3 receipts. One for a fur coat at £250, a gold watch at £75, and a pair of garnet earrings at £60. Are these the receipts you obtained when you purchased these gifts?
Yes, they are.
Thank you, Mr. Zachi.
Mr. Zachi, I'm a bit confused about the time sequence in your testimony. You say you were engaged to the defendant for 6 months.
About that, yes.
When was that? When did you first meet the defendant?
About 3 years ago, I think.
So when Mrs. Miller came to see you to tell you she was going to marry somebody else, you hadn't in fact seen her for 2 years.
I think that is right.
So when Mrs. Miller came to see you that day to tell you she was going to be married, it wasn't really put all over, was it? I mean, quite a lot had happened, hadn't it? When you first knew her, she was a man disguised as a woman.
Oh, but I didn't know that because we had not been lovers.
And when you saw her 2 years later, she had had the operation.
My lord, I fail to see the relevance of this line of questioning. Either way, the accused is guilty of obtaining gifts under the pretense that she was competent to marry.
I will show the relevance of it if my friend will kindly stop interrupting me.
Yes, all right, go on.
Mr. Zachi, when Mrs. Miller came to see you that day to say she was going to be married, did she give you anything?
A little money, £50 perhaps.
And she told you, did she not, that she had sold your presents to help pay for the operation?
It's possible, I don't remember.
Didn't she also say that she hoped to return all the money you'd spent on presents, that she was making a new start, and wanted a clean slate.
She said she was making a new start, but nothing about returning anything more than the £50. She just was afraid I might tell her new man what had happened between us.
And what had happened between you?
I told you. I bought her gifts, thinking we were to be married.
Mr. Zachi, where did you meet the defendant?
A pub.
Which pub?
Oh, I don't remember. To a foreigner, one seems very like another.
Didn't you meet her in the Black Swan on Regency Place?
It's possible.
The Black Swan is a drag pub where Mrs. Miller, then Stephen Lewis, was working. I suggest that you did meet her there before her operation, and I suggest that you knew at the time she was a male, the nature of your relationship being homosexual.
This is not true. She was waiting on tables. All kinds of people go to this pub. We were not lovers. I am not a criminal.
No, I am not suggesting you are.
She is on trial. She takes money and gifts dishonestly. She is the fraud. I am not on trial.
I am not suggesting you are on trial or involved in criminal activities, but I do suggest that you had a homosexual relationship with the defendant, that you knew from the beginning that she was at that time not a female. That the marriage plans were games, fantasies, the shopping trips, the talk about when the defendant was a little girl, the acting out of a male-female relationship, the truth of which you knew perfectly well.
Mr. Lyne, are you a surgeon at St. Mark's Hospital, Fulchester?
Yes.
And did you, on the 26th of April, 1976, perform a surgical operation on the accused?
I did.
What was the name of the accused when you performed this operation?
Stephen Lewis.
Why was the surgery performed? What was its purpose?
The surgery was performed so that Mr. Lewis could live as fully as possible as a woman.
How was the decision reached to perform this surgery?
The decision was reached after lengthy discussion with and examination of the patient, and after extensive consultation with a team of psychiatrists who were satisfied that he had succeeded in living as a woman for the past year.
Can you summarize your findings for us, please?
It was agreed that Stephen Lewis was a transsexual.
Can you define that for us, the term transsexual?
A transsexual is someone who has an extremely powerful urge to become a member of the opposite sex to the fullest possible extent.
And why does this occur?
A normal infant sees himself as part of his mother for the first 6 months of his life. He then sees himself as a separate person. And then a normal male child becomes aware at, say, 18 months that he is of the same sex as his father.
And the transsexual?
Transsexual never stops identifying with his mother, never stops wanting to be her. There is invariably a history dating back to early childhood of seeing themselves as members of the opposite sex. This persists in spite of their being brought up normally as members of their own sex. It goes on, and as in this case, they come to see themselves as females imprisoned in male bodies. Now, Stephen Lewis had been taking hormones for over 12 years, until he had developed female characteristics. He had been living as a woman for 10 years. It was agreed that he would be better off if he could have, as nearly as possible, the body of a woman. We felt, in fact, that this was his only chance for survival.
Is transsexuality always a psychological phenomenon?
My psychiatrist colleague, Dr. Lawn, has seen 1,300 transsexuals. The vast majority of cases are psychological. Of course, there are cases of true intersex, either chromosome abnormalities or cases where a newborn baby appears to be of one sex but is in fact of another. Let me try to put it simply. Each human being has 23 pairs of chromosomes in his body cells. One pair determines the sex of the individual. If the individual is female, that pair will be XX. If male, the pair will be XY. Sometimes something happens at conception that results in chromosomal abnormality, an error, and the individual is born with characteristics of both sexes. Or an individual can, at birth, give the appearance of being male when that person is in fact female.
And was Stephen Lewis such a case?
No. His case was purely psychological. He was and is medically a male. He was thoroughly examined before the operation, and his chromosome makeup is XY, male. I performed the surgery, as I say, after consultation with other experts in an attempt to help him function in some way so that he wouldn't harm himself.
Mr. Lyne, did Stephen Lewis know whether he was a male or a female?
Oh, he knew he was a male. Of course, he didn't want to be, but he knew the results of the tests. He signed a consent form.
May he be shown Exhibit 6? Is that the form?
Yes.
Will you read it to us, please?
I, Stephen Lewis, and then in parentheses, Marianne Lewis, consent to undergo this operation explained to me by Mr. George Lyne. I understand it's being done to prevent deterioration in my mental health, and it will not alter my male sex, and it is signed by the defendant.
Thank you, Mr. Lyne.
Mr. Lyne, you say that Stephen Lewis never believed he could be anything but male. You also say that you had several discussions with the patient before the operation.
Yes, that's right.
What did he say to you about his sex?
Well, he said he believed himself to be a woman trapped in a man's body, which is what transsexuals believe. I explained that.
Yes, you did, Mr. Lyne, for which we're most grateful. Yet you go on to say that Marianne Miller knew she was male.
Medically. He knew that medically he would always remain a male. He signed a consent form. He knew he couldn't really be changed.
Mr. Lyne, if Mrs. Miller hadn't signed that form...
My lord, the accused is now called Mrs. Miller. At the time he signed that form, his name was Stephen Lewis. Yes. Was his legal name?
Mr. Lyne, if my client had refused to sign that form, if he hadn't said in writing that he believed himself to be technically male, would you have performed the surgery?
Of course not. The form is a requirement.
In other words, it was signed under duress.
The witness has said nothing about pressurizing the accused into signing that form?
Except that if he didn't sign, he couldn't have the operation.
Mrs. Freeman, can you show that the accused was under duress when he signed the form?
I intend to do so, my lord, later on in these proceedings.
Do you have any other further questions for this witness?
Yes, my lord.
Right.
Mr. Lyne, does every transsexual who is referred to you believe he couldn't change the sex into which he was born?
We help them try to understand that and adjust to it.
But what if they didn't really believe it after all?
And then they're psychotics.
I see. Mr. Lyne, you and your colleagues, what are your criteria in judging who should have this surgery?
We perform the surgery only on those who we would believe would benefit from living as members of the opposite sex.
And wouldn't they be better off if they could marry?
No.
Why not?
Because it's against the law.
What if it weren't against the law?
But it is.
The case of the Queen against Miller will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. The case of the Queen against Marianne Miller, formerly Stephen Lewis, continues today in the Crown Court. Marianne Miller was registered as male at birth, but has now had a sex change operation. She's pleaded guilty to a charge of having produced a forged birth certificate in order to be married. She's pleaded not guilty to the charges of obtaining property by deception from the man she married and from another man to whom she'd previously been engaged, and not guilty to the charge of making a false declaration when she represented herself to be female at the Register Office.
You are Marianne Miller, formerly Marianne Lewis, formerly Stephen Lewis. When did you start calling yourself Marianne Lewis?
About 12 years ago, when I decided I would live as a woman.
But at that time, you were still a male.
I suppose so, technically. But I had female characteristics as well.
When did they begin to develop?
When I was about 13, at the time when I should have been developing as a male. By the time I was 18, I knew that I ought to actually have been a woman. So I began to do something about it.
What did you do?
Hormone injections, cosmetics, clothing, all that.
The hormone injections. You hadn't taken them before you were 18?
No.
So, when you began developing female characteristics at the age of 13, was this development spontaneous?
I didn't do anything to make it happen, unless you believe that wishing makes it so.
Wishing?
Mr. Lyne described the way transsexuals feel about themselves. It's true, the way he put it. I felt for as far back as I can remember that I was a female trapped in the wrong body.
When you started getting your hormone injections and dressing as a woman, did that make you feel that you were a woman?
Not really. It made me feel better, you know, closer to what I wanted, but it wasn't really right. What I'm saying is, look, I was a drag queen, a man dressed as a woman, but that wasn't really the way I wanted to be. I wasn't a transvestite. It wasn't a compulsion to dress in women's clothes. Do you see? It wasn't the clothes. I didn't want to impersonate a female.
Were you a homosexual?
Assuming I was still male, yes, I suppose I was gay. I mean, I had men as lovers.
And how long did you live this way?
For about 12 years. And then I met someone who'd actually had the change, and she convinced me that I could do it. So 2 years ago, I met Mr. Lyne, and about a year later, he agreed to do the operation.
And now that you've had the operation, how do you feel about yourself?
I feel right is the best way to describe it. I was wrong before, but now I'm the way I should have been born. I know the surgeon says I'm still male and it's all psychological, but he's wrong. I can't prove it and I don't understand it, but I'm sure that I'm physically and medically a woman now, and I don't care if my chromosomes are XY or double Z.
You did, however, sign the consent slip saying that you realized you'd always be male.
Well, of course I signed it. You have to sign it or they don't do the operation. I know that I'm a woman. I did forge my birth certificate to say female, but the new birth certificate is truer than the old one. And when that woman at the registry office didn't question me, I mean, why should she? I had every right to get married to a man. If the law says I can't, then the law's wrong. It won't be the first time. Being called Stephen Lewis, that was a lie. My life as a woman is the truth, and I don't mind fighting to prove that.
Mrs. Miller, regarding your life as a woman, is this your medical card?
Yes.
That'll be Exhibit 7.
Yes, my lord. When the health authority issued this card, were they aware that you'd been registered male at birth?
Yes.
And they accept that you are female?
My lord, with the greatest respect, I cannot see the relevance of this line of questioning. I mean, no matter how many medical insurance cards the defense produces, the accused is still male for the purposes of marriage. Precedent was established in Corbett versus Corbett, 1970.
My lord, I have myself made reference to that case. It is plainly a question of fact whether a person is a man or a woman. And I intend to prove that my client was female in fact for all practical purposes relating to this trial and had no reason to know that she could not legally wed.
Yes, I see. Well, I think I may take some persuading that the question is purely one of fact. Continue, Mrs. Freeman.
Thank you, my lord. Mrs. Miller, were you at any time after your operation admitted to hospital?
Yes, last year I had meningitis.
And how long were you in hospital?
A fortnight.
And which ward were you in?
Ward C, the women's ward.
And nobody challenged your right to be treated in this ward?
No.
So, you were operated on by Mr. Lyne approximately 2 years ago, is that right?
Yes.
And how soon after the operation did you meet Harry Miller?
It wasn't after. It was before the operation.
You knew Harry Miller before?
Oh, yes, for about 6 months.
He's testified that he only knew you for 4 months before you were married. That would be at least 1 year after your operation.
He's lying.
Will you please tell the court how and when you did meet your husband?
I met him about 2 years ago at a pub, the Black Swan.
And what was your job there?
I was an entertainer. I couldn't do much of anything. I mean, I couldn't sing or do impressions. I just danced a little. Chorus girl, sort of. I looked quite good. The visual impact, you know, the makeup and the clothes.
How did you meet Harry Miller?
Well, it was the usual. After the show, you sort of circulate, and he bought me a drink. We talked a lot. Not about our lives or anything like that. We talked about what we'd seen on the telly lately and state of the Tory party, that sort of thing. I didn't know what his story was, and I didn't ask, because they always tell you when they're ready. And he came back the next night, and then 2 nights the following week. And he started asking me about myself, you know, about what I was doing and how I felt about it. And I told him that I wasn't really a drag queen, that I knew I could be actually a woman. And he said, well, he wasn't that way himself. He'd just come into the pub with his mates for a bit of a giggle. You'll always find a bunch of yobs at a place like the Swan. Anyway, he said he couldn't help being impressed. He was amazed that someone who was a man could be so much like a woman. He thought it was a real art and that the people who did drag acts on the telly were really talented. And then he said he'd like to take me out. He would get a kick out of taking me out and nobody being able to tell that I wasn't a woman. He said he'd never done anything like it and it would be a real adventure. Well, that wasn't anything to me. I mean, I'd done the rounds lots of times with plenty of blokes, so I said, all right. And we went out and we had a lovely time, a nice dinner. He enjoyed it and he seemed really chuffed about it. We went out again the next week and quite a few times after that. And he kept asking me more and more about it, about the makeup and where I got the clothes. And then one night, he asked if he could see my room where I lived. And I said, sure. I mean, it wasn't much of a room, but, you know, comfortable. I'd made it nice. And he was wandering around looking at things, and I went to make some coffee. And when I turned round, he was sitting in front of the mirror using some brown eyeshadow of mine. He said I wanted to try it. And we both fell about because he'd made such a mess of it. And then he said, will you show me how to do it properly? Will you dress me up? And I said, sure. And we had a fantastic time. He said he'd never done anything like that, but it was good fun and people shouldn't be so narrow and so frightened of having a good time. Well, he came over nearly every night after that to dress up. And that's all it was for ages. He enjoyed it, but he knew he didn't look really right. He kept saying how much he admired me, the way I looked, because, you know, with me, the effect was so good, it really worked. And I told him how I felt, that I wasn't doing it for the effect, that I knew I could be a woman. And I told him about the operation and that I wanted to do it. Well, that's the sort of information that makes people a bit nervous, but he took it pretty well. And then he said, wouldn't it be amazing if I actually were a woman and we could be like a woman and a man? And that was the first time that anything physical happened between us. Of course, at the time, it was a gay relationship because I hadn't been put right yet, so it was just something between two men. But he said that the only reason he could do it was that he saw me as a woman and how marvellous it would be after the operation. The money he gave me, it was for that, so that I could jump the queue and get the operation earlier. Well, we started planning right then that we'd be married. He really wanted it then more than I did. That was what was going to make it all perfect. And then I finally had the surgery.
And what happened then, after the surgery?
It was wonderful. It was all very good. I finally felt right about myself.
And Harry, did he feel right about you?
Well, I thought he would, but it seemed difficult for him.
What was difficult for him?
Well, he couldn't seem to get used to the way I looked. He'd liked me before, you see, with the eyelashes and the pancake makeup, the sequin tights, you know, all the gear. But I didn't want to do that anymore. It was like fancy dress. I wanted to dress according to my own taste. Well, we argued a bit. He said, if you're a real woman, you'll want to please me. And I said, do you want a woman or a drag queen? And he said, just give him time. He needed time to get used to me looking so different. He said he really cared about me, and it would all be all right after we were married.
And were you married as soon as possible?
No, he left. He went missing for about 2 months. I assumed he'd lost his nerve. I mean, it'd be understandable, wouldn't it? Deciding that a woman who used to be a man perhaps wasn't the girl you wanted to bring home to Mummy. But he came back. He said he wanted to get married straight away, immediately. He said also, please, never to ask him where he'd been or who he'd been with. I mean, I don't know if it's another woman or a man. It didn't matter to me. I felt he'd come to some kind of peace with himself about it. And I did want to get married. That's what women do. They get married. He did say he wanted to go on dressing up himself sometimes. He said it helped him relax. So I said, why not? I've enough cream eyeshadow for both of us. And the next day, we filed at the registry office.
So, when you went to give notice of your intent to marry, what did Harry Miller know about you?
He knew that I'd been born into the wrong sex, born a male, and that it had been corrected, that I was now female.
Why do you think that Harry Miller has testified that he never knew you had been born a male until someone told him?
because other people found out. As soon as other people found out, he caved in. He just caved in.
Mrs. Miller, we have heard the testimony of Victor Czaky, a man you knew before you knew your husband. It is implicit in his testimony that your relationship was motivated by a desire for financial gain. Is this true?
Financial gain from poor old Victor? No.
Were your relationships with men in general motivated by a desire for financial gain?
My relationships with men in general were motivated by a desire not to be alone in general. That's one of the few motivations I share with the rest of the world.
And when you married at the registry office and when you filled in the forms, what sex were you then?
Female. I don't care about Corbett against bloody Corbett. I was female.
And after you were married, was the relationship satisfactory?
Not really. I mean, it wasn't exactly Doris Day to begin with. But it was him. He was the one with the secret problem, not me. He was the one slipping into his fishnet tights when he got home. I mean, I think he never wanted a woman. I think he always wanted another man, and that my change was just a way of making it all right. Only it didn't. But it was his problem, not mine.
Mrs. Miller, you've been charged with obtaining gifts by deception. Did Harry Miller give you presents?
Yes, and money, and the farm as a wedding present. That's what men do for women. But there was no deception and no false declaration. I mean, that's why I wouldn't give back the farm. I wanted to stay together and he didn't. That was no reason why I should give back the things he'd given me, just because he'd lost his nerve.
When did he tell you he'd lost his nerve?
As he said, about 3 weeks after we were married. But not because he'd found out anything about me that he didn't know. It was because his friends found out, his mates. And they didn't know that he was anything different from them. He thought he could just get away with it, that he could introduce me as this girl he met at a party. It was part of the excitement, you see, the game. But it wasn't a fancy dress party. Not for me, anyway. Anyway, you can't hide it, not unless you move away and change your life completely. But that's when he really came apart, when he found out that other people knew. And that's when he constructed this whole amazing lie that he hadn't known about me. He may have convinced himself it's true, I don't know. He's not very stable. But what I've told you, that's what happened.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller.
Mr. Parnell?
My lord, you will have observed that the accused has given evidence in a number of matters never put to Harry Miller in cross-examination. I should like to have the opportunity of recalling him before cross-examining the accused.
Yes, all right, Mr. Parnell.
Thank you, my lord.
Yes. Will you return to the dock temporarily? Mr. Miller, remember you're still on oath.
Yes or no?
Mr. Miller, the accused has given her version of events leading up to your marriage, which differs substantially from your own. Can you enlighten us at all?
I don't know. People like her, they make up things, fantastic lies, and other people believe them.
The accused says you met in a pub called the Black Swan. Have you ever been to that pub?
Yes, once.
When was that?
Maybe 2 or 3 weeks after we met. We were walking by and Marianne said, "This is where I used to work. It's drag night, let's go in just for a laugh." Well, it didn't seem so strange. Lots of pubs have drag entertainers now and then. There was this sign presenting Mark somebody or other, the Wicked Witch of the East. She said, "Come on, you'll really like him, he's really funny."
And did you go in?
Yes. Well, it felt a bit odd, but there were plenty of straight people there.
And what happened?
We had a few drinks, watched the cabaret, and then this friend of Marianne's came and sat with us.
Male or female friend?
I thought it was a girl, maybe it wasn't. It was someone who seemed to be female.
Yes.
Well, we all got a bit drunk, I suppose. Then this friend of Marianne's took a lipstick out of her purse to do her mouth. All of a sudden, she turned to me and she said, "I wonder if this shade would suit you, dear." And before I could move, she got a great slash of lipstick across my mouth. Then she started to get all her makeup out and she wanted to do my whole face.
And did she?
Of course not, I wouldn't let her. Then she started to put her hat on my head and I got fed up and I said, "Come on, let's go," and we went.
And that was the end of it?
When we got outside, we both laughed because I'd still got lipstick across my mouth and chin. She wiped it off, and that's all.
Was that the only time you have ever been to the Black Swan?
Yes.
And was that the only time you have ever had women's cosmetics on your face?
Yes. That story she told her. I suppose she took that one evening and improvised. She's like that.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. That's all. Well, now, Mr. Lewis.
Could my learned friend address my client by her chosen name, Mrs. Marianne Miller, for the sake of clarity, if nothing else?
Referring to the accused by her chosen name would do nothing for the sake of clarity, my lord.
Just a minute. So that these proceedings don't come to a halt every time the defendant is addressed, I think we should reach a decision about this. What was your legal name at the time of your marriage?
Marianne Lewis. I had it changed by deed poll.
Is Miss Lewis acceptable to you?
I'm sure I've been called worse.
All right, Mr. Parnell.
Thank you, my lord. Miss Lewis, you and Mr. Miller seem to be offering different versions of your meeting and subsequent marriage ceremony.
Yes.
You say you met Harry Miller before your operation in a gay bar and that he knew all along that you'd been born a male.
That's right.
You've described a lengthy friendship where Mr. Miller dressed in women's clothing and where you eventually had a homosexual relationship.
Yes.
Miss Lewis, when you were working at this pub, did you have any friends? Did you socialize with any of the other people who worked there?
Yes.
And did you, every now and then, have double dates or go out with your friends and their dates? Did you have parties?
Sometimes.
And when you got to know Mr. Miller, did you do the same thing, go out in groups with your other friends?
No.
No?
No, he wouldn't. He didn't want anyone else to know. He made me promise never to tell anyone, and I never did.
Must have been difficult keeping it a secret. How did you manage it?
Not that difficult. We never went to the same restaurant more than once. I had my own room. Well, some of the neighbours may have seen us, but nobody was that interested.
And you never attracted anyone's attention?
Not that I know of.
And you didn't have a best friend or anyone that you'd told about your relationship?
No, I'd promised I wouldn't.
So, there isn't anyone, not one single person who can corroborate your testimony, which is so very different from that of Mr. Miller's.
Not that I can think of.
Oh, I dare say. And I suggest, Miss Lewis, that the reason you can't produce corroborating testimony is because it never happened. I suggest your entire story as one great big, gorgeous and spectacular fantasy. And fantasy is putting it gently. Some might even say, lie.
He knew I'd kept my promise never to tell anyone. He knew I couldn't prove it, otherwise he'd never have dared to go to a solicitor. I've told the truth.
We'll let the jury decide that, shall we? Now, you say you knew other men before you knew Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Did any of these men give you presents?
Yes, of course. That's what men do.
And money? Did some of them give you money?
I don't see the relevance of this line of questioning. It has nothing to do with the current charges.
Defense have asserted that the accused is in good character and that a relationship with men is not motivated by a desire for money.
Yes. Yes, I can see the relevance.
Thank you, my lord. So, you received gifts and sometimes money.
More usually gifts.
And did the men who gave you these gifts sometimes receive sexual favors in return?
No. Not in return.
Did they receive sexual favors?
My lord, my client is not under indictment for soliciting.
Again, this relates to the accused's character.
Yes, all right, go on.
Did these men...
Some did and some didn't, depending.
On what?
On how we felt. Some of them were straight, and some of them were gay, and some were just transvestites, and some didn't know what they were. But if a man ever gave me anything, any man, it was out of friendship.
Friendship?
That's right. Most of the men I knew were, to put it gently, confused. They liked me for a very good reason.
Yes?
Well, I wasn't going to deliver any harsh judgments, was I?
Maybe not, Miss Lewis. But I would still question your good character. As to the charge of making false declaration, Mrs. Freeman has said you had no way of knowing that you were not female for the purpose of marriage, and therefore had no intention of making false declaration when you went through the ceremony of marriage. You have said in your testimony that when you went to the registry office, you were, quote, female, I don't care about Corbett against bloody Corbett, I was female, end quote. Corbett against Corbett is a case referred to in this trial by me and my colleague. Now, in that case, a husband petitioned for a declaration that his marriage to a male who had had an operation similar to yours was void and should be annulled. Are you aware of the judgment in that case?
Yes.
Would you tell the court?
He was granted the annulment.
On the grounds that the wife was not a woman for the purpose of marriage. Now, the wife, like you, was registered as a male at birth. Like you, had undergone a sex change operation. Like you, had the XY chromosome, and she was, I repeat, judged to be not a woman for the purpose of marriage. Now, that judgment was given in 1970. How long ago did you hear about it?
Since it happened, I suppose.
You knew about that judgment 6 years before you were married. You knew about it when you gave notice of intent to marry at the Bridge Street Registry Office. And yet you tell us that when you presented yourself as a female at that registry office, you did not intend to make false declaration.
I did not.
How do you expect us to believe that?
I expect you to look at me.
The case of the Queen against Miller will be concluded tomorrow in the Crown Court.
Thank you for coming.
Well, you have to when they send you the thing. I mean, I would have anyway. How have you been?
Oh, not so bad. You look fine.
Ah, keep busy. Is that,
My husband? Yeah. Not all that much, is he?
Well, I couldn't say.
Would you attend the court, please?
Marianne Miller, who was registered as male at birth and has had a sex change operation, has pleaded not guilty to charges of making a false declaration at the register office in order to be married to Harry Miller and of obtaining property by deception from Mr. Miller and another man to whom she was engaged, who claim that they did not know that she'd been born a male. Today, the jury will be asked to reach a verdict.
Mr. Lewis, are you related to the defendant?
Yes, I'm her father.
When was the last time you saw your daughter?
About 6 months ago, I think.
Had she had the surgery at that time?
Yes, about 6 months before.
And before that? When was the time you had seen her before that?
Oh, years. When she was still 10 years, maybe. Stephen, he was still Stephen then, had just got out of the army. You wouldn't think so, but he was in the army. He joined up. Suppose he felt he needed to get away.
From what?
Well, the pressure. His mother always going on about girls, and when was he going to bring someone home? As if she didn't know.
Mr. Lewis, on that first visit, how old was Stephen?
Oh, just coming up to 20, I think.
And how did he look?
Well, he wasn't wearing that drag stuff, if that's what you mean. I mean, he's not an idiot. He wouldn't have done that to his mother, with her pretending he was this sensitive genius doing an electronics course in the army. He wasn't spiteful. He never meant to upset anyone.
So he looked quite normal?
Well, no, I couldn't say that. You see, he'd been doing the hormones for about 2 years, and he'd bleached his hair. The three of us sat around like some Sunday dinner reunion, except he wouldn't have any roast potatoes on account of his weight, which didn't please his mother any too much. And, well, was there anything else you wanted to know?
Did you talk about it at all? About the kind of life he was leading?
No. He said he had this job in a pub at night so he could do this special electronics course in the daytime. Well, his mother latched onto that. But, I mean, anyone could see. Well, he didn't stay too long, and when I drove him to the station, he said, I don't suppose I'll see you for a while, Dad. And I said, if you ever want anything, just get in touch. I don't suppose we mentioned him for, 10 years. Then I had this letter saying he'd had this operation. He wanted to see me, not his mother. He wanted to have a chat with me.
And what was your reaction to that?
Well, I must be honest, I felt sick. I didn't want to see him or whatever he'd become, but as I'd said, if he ever wanted anything to get in touch, it didn't seem right to say no. A father has certain obligations, no matter what.
And when you saw her, how did she look?
Well, the way she does now. I thought he'd look strange, but somehow he looked more normal than he'd ever done before. I mean, before she didn't look like either a man or a woman, but now, at least.
And what did you talk about? Why had she wanted to see you?
She just wanted to show me the way she was and wanted me to see how much happier and better off she was now. She even told me about this man who knew all about her and how they were going to get married and adopt a child and how would I like to be a grandfather.
And what was your reaction to that?
Well, I told her she had to be more realistic. I mean, we weren't ever going to be an ordinary family with me bringing musical teddy bears at Christmas, but she knew that. She said she just wanted to re-establish contact with me. She said she loved me. I wish I could have said the same to her. Maybe one day. I'm not a very advanced sort of person.
With all due sympathy, may we know where this is leading?
Please do come to the point, Mrs. Freeman.
Mr. Lewis, do you accept that she's a woman?
Well, anyone can see she's a woman. I don't say that I could ever accept her as my daughter, but she certainly isn't my son anymore. Whatever he was, he's gone.
So you accept her as a woman. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Lewis, your son has testified that at an age when he should have been developing as a male, he in fact began developing female characteristics. Did you notice this?
No, but I wouldn't have. You see...
The witness has answered no when asked if he noticed whether his son was developing female characteristics. No further explanation is required, Mr. Lewis. Now, this spontaneous development as a female, did your wife ever mention it to you?
No, but she was the last one.
Again, the answer is no. Yes or no is really all we require, Mr. Lewis.
It's not always that simple.
Your wife noticed nothing unusual?
The witness has said his wife never mentioned anything, not that she didn't notice.
All right, didn't mention anything, I'll accept that. Now, Mr. Lewis, did your son at this time have any medical checkups? Routine ones for school or for illnesses?
Not that I can remember.
So, to your knowledge, there are no medical reports describing your son's physical condition at the time when he says he began developing these secondary characteristics of a female?
Not that I know of.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
You wish to re-examine Mrs. Freeman?
Yes, my lord. Mr. Lewis, we won't keep you much longer. The prosecution has established that you never noticed whether your son was developing secondary female characteristics, and that your wife never mentioned it if she did notice. Did it seem to you that your son was developing normally as a male, physically?
I don't know. He never came asking me for razor blades, but he was always fair-skinned, and he was very independent. If he'd wanted a razor, he'd have got one for himself. His face was always smooth. Unlike me, I looked like an unclipped hedge by 5 o'clock. And, you see, him and me, and his mother as well, well, we liked our privacy. We kept to ourselves.
No, I meant physically. Was he developing like a normal male?
I hardly ever saw him with his clothes off, so I can't say. He did seem...
Yes?
I don't know. I just don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Professor Byron, you are a professor of medicine.
That's right.
What is your special interest?
Endocrinology.
Can you explain that word for us?
It's the study of chemical substances produced by the body. Hormones, for example. Chemical substances produced by the sex organs and other tissues in the body. I study the way in which these chemicals can affect human behavior.
Professor, do you know Marianne Miller?
Yes, I was a member of the team that recommended her surgery.
When was that?
I first met her almost 3 years ago.
And in that year, can you remember how many transsexuals were referred to you?
I should say about 35.
Did they all wish to have surgery?
Yes.
And in how many cases did you recommend surgery?
In 6 of them.
Why those 6?
Unlike many of my colleagues, I don't believe in these operations as psychotherapy. I only recommend them in what I believe to be cases of true intersex, where the sex isn't as simple as male or female, but something intermediate, where I believe that the abnormality is organically based. That is to say, where there are physical factors contributing to the patient's condition.
Mr. Lyne, who performed the surgery on this patient, has testified that in his opinion, the patient was physically a normal male before the operation, and that he is now still technically male. Do you agree with that opinion?
I do not. I disagree with many doctors about many of their transsexual patients.
Could you give us the nature of that disagreement?
Mr. Lyne and others believe that one's actual sex is determined by 3 factors: chromosomes, gonads, that is, testes and ovaries, and sex organs. Mrs. Miller would be judged male according to those criteria. I believe that the most significant criterion is the chemical balance, the hormones that our own body produces, because this is what affects her behavior. And the way that we behave is, after all, what we are.
Professor, a great deal of evidence has been introduced to prove that Marianne Miller was born a normal male. Do you accept this evidence?
I don't accept it. I can't disprove it. I can only offer a theory.
What is that theory?
Mr. Lyne and various others regard all cases of transsexualism as psychological, unless there is some obvious physical abnormality that can be seen or tested for. I, along with several of my colleagues, believe that the condition is organic much more often than they realize, because they can't detect the abnormality. We've done some experiments with rhesus monkeys that lead us to believe that the behavior of adult animals can be affected by an organic occurrence in early infancy.
May I ask for a little clarification, please? By adult animals, you mean adult monkeys?
That's right.
Thank you.
There's a part of the brain in humans, as well as in monkeys, called the hypothalamus. Our experiments indicate that the cells in this part of the brain are sometimes influenced by certain sex hormones in early infancy. There are no medical indications at the time, but the result can be, sexual abnormality, or what is considered sexual abnormality.
Such as?
Such as homosexuality or transsexuality.
My client has testified that at the age of 13, she began developing secondary female characteristics. Is there any way that such a thing could actually happen?
Yes, the most common medical condition is known as Klinefelter syndrome, where the patient, although born a male, suffers from a chemical imbalance and doesn't develop normally.
What would be the symptoms of this syndrome?
Incomplete development as a male and the emergence of female characteristics.
The symptoms described by my client?
Yes.
These symptoms wouldn't necessarily be psychogenic?
No, not necessarily.
So, in your opinion, Mrs. Miller's condition before the operation was not that of a male, was based on an organic disorder, that it was physical, not just psychological. For her current, believe that she is male or female?
I think that she should be registered as female for all purposes.
Mrs. Freeman has asked the witness whether he thinks the accused is female, not how she should be registered.
I believe that she is female.
Professor, can you tell us how Mrs. Miller changed physically after the operation?
Before the surgery, she'd been taking female hormone injections for a long time, and so for that reason, if for no other, she developed female characteristics. After the operation, her body would produce less of the male hormone and more of the female hormone. So naturally, she now appears more feminine, and her behavior is more feminine. That's why I can't concur with the opinion that the patient is still a male, or has any reason to believe that she's male. The chromosome doesn't control her behavior. Her behavior is subject to the chemicals produced by her body. She behaves as a female. She has been assigned to the female sex. It has been decided by a team of medical experts that she should live as a female. Why should those same experts, how dare they expect her to believe that she is male, or be denied any of the privileges of the female sex, including that of marriage to a male? How can we take on the responsibility for such a drastic surgical procedure and then opt out of the social implications? I accept that the issue is a complicated one, but we don't make it any the less complicated by regarding Mrs. Miller as slightly female, as a woman for some purposes and a man for others.
My lord, I've been patient probably longer than I ought to have been, waiting for some point to emerge here.
Yes, of course, it would be wrong to turn this court into a speaker's platform. A medical opinion is all that is required. Mrs. Freeman, is there any other point you wish to explore with this witness?
None, my lord. Thank you, Professor Byron.
Professor, various other experts have testified that the accused was, before his operation, a medically normal male with a severe psychological disturbance. You believe that he was never normal and always suffered from some organic disorder.
I do.
You mentioned some experiments you were doing on monkeys.
That's right, rhesus monkeys.
Have you, in your research into sexual deviation, achieved any results that could be applied to human beings?
The application is at this time hypothetical.
Quite. You said these experiments with immature monkeys had led you to believe that the behavior of adult monkeys may be affected by an organic occurrence in early infancy. So, extrapolating from what you think may be a chemical source of sexual disturbance in monkeys, you've concluded that if such a condition does exist in humans, the accused could have been suffering from it.
You make me sound like an idiot.
Oh, no, nobody could say that. I know that you've published several important papers in your field. Have the results of your current experiments been published?
No.
Have they been submitted for publication?
No, not yet.
I see.
I said it was a theory. In medicine, as opposed to law, one is assumed wrong until proven right.
Professor, you've mentioned some kind of syndrome.
Klinefelter syndrome.
Yes, thank you. That related to the accused's testimony that at puberty she began to develop secondary female characteristics. Can one detect this syndrome?
It is usually, though not always, accompanied by the XXY chromosome.
And the accused has the single XY chromosome?
Yes.
So, in fact, there is no evidence that the accused ever suffered from this syndrome?
Not as such, no. But X-rays of her hand indicated to me...
Indicated to you?
Medical evidence, like legal evidence, must be interpreted. The bones in her wrist hadn't knit. There were still fusion lines. This indicates a shortage of the substance called androgen, and such a substance could have prevented Mrs. Miller from developing as a normal male.
So, your opinion that the accused was never a normal male comes down to a hypothesis based on the behavior of rhesus monkeys and a possible shortage of androgen in the body.
Counsel, less than 100 years ago, nobody knew about chromosomes. Now they seem to dictate the order of the universe until the next big discovery. What's the good of science if it's to be frozen in time, or of law, for that matter?
Professor, have you ever heard the term selective memory?
It's a psychiatric term.
But you can define it for us.
The word refers to an individual living in fantasy who remembers the events that fit in with that fantasy and rejects the events which don't.
Is this selective memory typical of the transsexual personality?
Often.
So, in saying that she developed the secondary characteristics of a female, could Miss Lewis be remembering that because she's fair-skinned she never had a heavy beard? Could she be remembering the normal development of the male chest muscles? Could she be putting back the effects of the estrogen treatment in her mind, putting them back to when she was much younger?
That seems to be your theory.
Is it impossible?
No.
Is it any less likely than your hypothetical theories of organic disorders?
I think it is less likely, but it may be more palatable to the jury.
Professor Byron, I have the greatest admiration for your sense of social responsibility. But I suggest that your sense of moral obligation to Marianne Lewis to help her adjust has caused you to find medical indications that don't exist. I mean, you are entitled to think that the law that prevents Miss Lewis from marrying is unjust. You're entitled to try to change that law. But I suggest that your testimony concerning her early medical history is so theoretical that it cannot be taken seriously. I have no further questions. Members of the jury, you have heard so much evidence, and much of it highly technical, that I think it would be a good idea to remind you all of the charges. The accused has pleaded guilty to the charge of uttering a forged birth certificate. There are 3 other charges to which he has pleaded not guilty. He's accused of obtaining property from Harry Miller by deception. That is, Harry Miller, thinking he was marrying a woman, signed away his farm, his entire life savings. The accused has told a story of a bizarre 6-month relationship with Mr. Miller. He says that this man is a transvestite, that he dresses in women's clothes. Now, the defense has set up an enormously complex case, plying you with technical details until your heads are probably swimming in an attempt to blind you with science. The facts are these. The accused, having the XY chromosome, is a male, and therefore is not competent to marry another male. If you find the accused not guilty, you will not be setting a wild criminal loose on the streets. There is no murder here, no physical assault, no armed robbery. If you find the accused not guilty, you will be doing two things. You will almost certainly be depriving Mr. Miller of his life savings. And you will be making legal history. It will be recorded for all time that in the opinion of this jury, a man may actually marry another man.
Ladies and gentlemen, unlike my learned friend, I will not ask you to make a moral judgment, only to consider the testimony you've heard during the course of this trial. You've watched Marianne Miller. You've heard her speak. When she accepted property as a wedding present from Harry Miller, was it really deception? Was she pretending to be female? Look at her now. When Marianne Miller told the registrar that she was a woman, was she intending to lie? Ladies and gentlemen, it would be better if nature were perfect. But sadly, there are mistakes in nature, and Marianne Miller is one of those mistakes. And she has suffered horribly all her life from something she could never hope to control. She suffered from a defect at birth, as surely as if she'd been born a cripple. And when Marianne's birth defect was medically corrected, it was a remarkable achievement. How tragic, how unspeakably tragic it would be if that brilliant medical achievement is now destroyed in a court of law.
Members of the jury, you may think that the first point you have to decide is whether or not the accused is and was, at the time of the alleged offences, a woman. I say that because, of course, if she was a woman, there was no false representations or declarations. Now, this very same problem arose a few years ago and came before the courts in a case known as Corbett versus Corbett. In that case, the learned judge heard a great deal of medical evidence, and on that evidence and on the facts before him, he decided that the person in question was not a woman. Now, it seems to me that the question of what sex a woman is not a matter of law, but a matter of fact and medical evidence. Thus, it is for you to decide this question upon the evidence that you have heard. Putting the matter broadly, Mr. Lyne, who performed the operation, told us that in his opinion, the accused was and remains a man. Professor Byron, on the other hand, while accepting the characteristics described by Mr. Lyne, would not accept that they were the only criteria. He said that, in his view, one is how one behaves, and that the accused, for hormonal reasons, and having had this operation, behaves as a woman, and therefore is a woman. Well, these are all matters for you to consider.
Will the foreman please stand? Please answer the question yes or no. Have you reached verdicts upon which you're all agreed?
Yes.
On the second count, namely of obtaining property by deception, contrary to Section 15, subsection 1 of the Theft Act 1968, do you find the accused guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the third count, of making a false declaration, contrary to Section 31 of the Perjury Act 1911, do you find the accused guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the first count, of obtaining property by deception.
Lewis, You have pleaded guilty to a charge of forgery. That is a serious offense. But it would be wrong of me not to take into consideration the verdict of this jury here today. The effect of which is either that in their view you are a woman, or that in any event you genuinely believe yourself to be one. Accordingly, you will be conditionally discharged for a period of 12 months.
You can join us again when our cameras return to bring you another case in the Crown Court.